Right, hi everybody. It's Richard from the Homeschool Freedom Club. This is another one in the series of interviews with parents who are mixing home educating or world schooling with actually being able to earn a living to fund that lifestyle. And today I've got Vanessa Woozley with me. So thank you ever so much for coming on, Vanessa.
You're welcome. It's nice to meet you. Nice to be here.
No, it's great to see you. And we just having a nice chat actually just before we kicked off here. And just want to sort of find out a little bit more about you and about your background. So, what's your home situation? How many kids do you have?
Okay, so I am divorced, so single mum.
Oh,
I have a 13-year-old daughter.
yeah,
What else would you like? My background of
yeah,
work.
that'd be great. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess I had a corporate background for a long period of time. Worked in financial industry. And then when my daughter was young, I really wanted to do a job that I loved. So I retrained in nutrition.
Yeah.
So I became a nutritional therapist. And since then, I've kind of done lots of different courses that have kind of supported that. So I do things like NLP, if you know that, neuro linguistic programming, EFT, emotional freedom technique. I've done hypnotherapy, lots of kind of mind courses to go alongside of the nutritional therapy. So that's kind of where I like to focus. And then homeschooling wise,
Yeah. What was with that?
yeah, so my daughter was in mainstream school,
Hmm.
and probably like a lot of people until we did the lockdown. But before, but before then, actually, probably for about 2 or 3 years before lockdown, I was talking about it with a very good friend of mine, saying I really want to homeschool because I really felt unhappy with what she was learning, and I really felt like I was unpicking a lot of the information that she was getting from school. If I'm honest, I was pretty shocked at some of the curriculum that was being taught to them. And for me, from a perspective of health, I
Yeah.
was really shocked at what they taught them about or didn't teach them about health. So there were lots of kind of things that I just felt it was really challenging for me to unpick all of that school conditioning. Um, so I've been thinking about it a long time, but I thought there's no way I can do this
Yeah.
and work at the same time, which is how a lot of people feel, right?
Yeah.
And then when we were doing it during lockdown, and I think every child is probably different, so I think you probably have to take it on a case by case basis. But for my daughter, she really loved to learn, and actually I realized, probably like myself, I guess that was part of my own journey as well, is I didn't love school because I wasn't learning what I was loving to learn. It was kind of like a means to an end, like get the grades, get to the next point. When I was studying nutrition and all my other courses since then, I
Yeah.
loved it. It wasn't like it was a chore. It was like, this thirst for knowledge, and I'd pick up books and I'd just listen to podcasts and I'd read, and you could learn in different ways that suited you. And I guess that was our experience of when we started learning things at home. We started ignoring a lot of, when I was looking at the stuff that she was learning for
Yeah.
school, I was like, oh, this is so awful. No wonder kids are so bored. And we just ended up, we'd do English and maths because I felt like that was a really good foundation, but we'd start following her own loves. So we started doing like Greek mythology,
Huh?
Egyptian
Wow.
stuff, um, and that was kind of it. And then we decided to go to a Steiner school
Hmm.
for a little while. So we did that for probably a year and a half. And then we moved house for that. And then our landlord served us notice. So that was kind of another, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, what now? And there was a real shortage of houses to rent where we were. So it's like, do you know what? Let's just go traveling, and we can do this online. So that's kind of where we're at
Yeah.
now.
So, I mean, yeah, okay, you made a couple of good points there. I mean, my son, he's about five years younger than your daughter, so he just started school when the lockdowns came in, and it was a similar situation for us. We saw, we looked at what he was supposed to be doing at school, and thinking, God, this is just garbage, honestly. And so we just didn't do any of it. And and the intention initially was to send him back to school after it, but we just saw that he was learning by like osmosis. Everything was a learning experience for him, and that he didn't necessarily need all that. And so yeah, I mean, COVID was a big catalyst for us for that. And I think you made some other good points as well. And yeah, the financial aspect is, I think, is one of the big barriers to people coming to home ed. Then you've also got things like, I'm not worthy, I can't do this, I'm not a teacher, is another one of the big, I think, mindsets that stops people from doing this. And then also sometimes it's just a lack of support from family as well, isn't it? I mean, you're fortunate in the UK in that there is a big home ed community, so you can find your tribe there. But if you've got family members or a spouse or whatever that's against it, it can make it incredibly tricky, I think, as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think actually that was one of my biggest worries, was telling my mum and dad. I thought they would be
Yeah.
really disapproving, but actually my my mum used to teach the higher education of teaching,
Okay.
and and interestingly, she was very supportive. She was like,
Wow.
I don't blame you. She said, they've made it very difficult for teachers now to do their job. It's all so much paperwork and progress that it does take a lot of the fun out of learning. So I think she'll be fine. And she was very supportive. So that was interesting.
That's interesting to hear it from someone who's actually in that environment.
Exactly. It wasn't the expected
Yeah.
outcome I thought I was going to get from my parents. So they were very supportive. And her dad was very hesitant at first.
Yeah.
Um, but actually, he's seen how well she's thriving now. So he's definitely changed his tune.
But this is a conversation that I have with a lot of home ed mums. It's usually the dads that are more resistant.
Yeah.
And my theory is, I mean, I was always in a fortunate position, and I worked from home from 2006 until 2020. Well, I still do work from home, but I have my own business. So I always used to. My daughter was at school. As I told you, I've got an older daughter who's 20, who's been all through the school system. So I used to do the school runs, and I used to do that. And then my little boy, you know, I used to be able to take him to school as well every morning, and I'd see how he felt as well, because it was one of the things that struck me afterwards. He was sort of watching the other kids like this, just running around screaming their lungs out, and he's quite highly sensitive, and just that environment for him was a really difficult environment to be in, with the noise and that amount of stimulation. And I think a lot of dads don't see that. If you've got a child that's crying every time you drop them off at the school gates, or they're coming home and they're stressed and they're screaming, it's generally the mums that have to deal with that stuff. The dads don't see it. And I do think if dads did the school runs, they would have a different opinion on home ed generally.
Yeah, quite possibly. But also I think it's unpicking the conditioning, isn't it? So I remember when I'd say to him, well, she doesn't really enjoy it. And
Yeah,
he'd say, well, who does enjoy school? You just get on with it. And I say, but maybe it doesn't have to be like that.
yeah,
And he does a job that he loves. So I was like, look, you do a job you love.
yeah,
Why can we not make schooling like that, so that they learn that from the very beginning?
yeah,
And really we just took it step by step, and I was like, let's just do it for now and see how we get on,
yeah, yeah,
and hopefully be open to that, and then explore it more. But now he can see the benefits and see that she's loving learning, and she's doing
yeah.
well, so now he's very on board.
No, it's amazing when you see them follow their passions and how they kind of light up. I mean, there's a quote, I can never remember who said it, but they were saying they go into school and see the first graders and second graders, and they're full of all these questions and this inquisitiveness, and like, why is the grass green and the sky blue, and he said, I'll go in like and see a group that's maybe 8, 10 years older, and there's just no spark at all, and it's like it's been crushed. That love of learning's been crushed out of them, and it goes back to what you were saying. You've been doing courses on NLP and things that you've really enjoyed, but then you get to choose how you learn, and you've been able to choose what you wanted to learn. And of course, the same is going to apply to kids, possibly even more so. They get something that really lights them up, then they get that intrinsic motivation to learn, don't they? And then they want more. And
Yeah.
the school environment really does kick that out of them over a period of years, I do feel. I'm not sort of putting teachers on the pillory here. They, as you say, they've got to work within a framework. But it does. The system really does give them a hammering when they're in there.
Yeah, and it's very prescriptive, and they learn a process, and I don't think you learn an intuitional way of doing things.
No.
So I think you do that when you have your own business. You kind of have to learn to problem solve, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think school necessarily teaches that. It teaches you this process. And I realized that when I was kind of looking at sort of maths, for example, they have a very prescriptive way of working something out.
Yeah.
And I would say, well, look, this is an easier way to do it. And she's like, well, no, we can't do it like that.
Right. Yeah. I remember that with my daughter's homework when she was coming home at like 10 years old. And I'm like, I can't do this.
Yeah, but isn't it interesting? Because for us now, we think, right, it's working out the back doors and the easiest way to get
Yeah.
there. And there's no right or wrong. There's no specific process.
No.
There's a doing it, failing it, doing it, failing it, and that's the only way that you learn how to
Yeah.
problem solve things.
As long as you get the result, just
Yeah.
the journey to get that actually really, really matter. It's, yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. So you said you've been sort of traveling and world schooling a bit. So what's been your favorite destination that you've been to so far?
Oh, I really love Portugal, if I'm
Yeah.
honest. In fact, if I was there somewhere that I'd probably find a home base again, it would probably be Portugal. I really love Portugal. It's just got a nice feel to it. Lots of different sort of terrains and climates. Quite an alternative, lots of different sort of alternative people out there. Just a different way of thinking. I say alternative, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
just more open to a different way of of living and schooling. So yeah, I do really love Portugal.
It's fun. No, I love it as well. I haven't been there for a few years, but we used to go there a lot. And so you're at the moment you're in Morocco,
Yes.
and you've been traveling around a bit. So how do you fit that traveling? What work do you do? How do you mentioned NLP before, so I assume you do some sort of therapy, but how do you fit that in around the traveling and find that balance with that and the home ed?
So I try and plan it around my daughter's school as much as possible.
Yeah,
So she'll do online classes. So she does have a tutor with a
yeah,
friend. So we found that for English and maths, that works really well. And then she does online classes. We found a really good, I don't know if people know this one, Learn, Laugh, Play, I think it's called.
right.
It's got teachers all the way up to GCSE level.
Okay,
And it's got a whole spectrum of different classes. Very inexpensive. They're at GCSE, they're a bit more expensive, but apart from that, they're £3 a class.
wow.
Yeah, so super affordable for parents. And it's been great for my daughter because she can go on and choose the classes that she loves.
Yeah,
They've got a really, really broad spectrum of classes on there. So she's doing her ancient civilizations on there. She's
good.
doing around the world, just making things like geography a little bit more fun,
Yeah,
in the way that they learn it. So I know kind of what days she's got her classes on.
yeah,
And then I try and book as much of my appointments around that. So we're kind of both working on the same day.
yeah,
Um, that worked out. I mean, we do a little bit together, but that worked out better than me trying to be the teacher, if I'm honest. Bit of learning curve in that way.
yeah,
And she loves it, and it's group classes for her, so she gets a bit of interaction on that, and she loves what she's learning, and a little bit of homework on it too.
yeah.
And then we travel in between those days, so we tend to find
Okay,
a location where we know we've got good Wi-Fi, although we do have a MiFi router.
yeah,
But although it doesn't work that well, and we're in Morocco at the moment,
yeah,
the SIM cards don't work in it. But however, the internet seems to work pretty good, so we're
yeah.
lucky on that respect. And then once we know we've got a break for a couple of days from school and work, we'll travel to a new location that way and then get set up again.
And if you're on a bigger time zone difference, how do you work that generally? Because you mentioned you spent some time in sort of Mexico, Costa Rica.
Yeah.
So how
I'm
do
trying
you?
to remember. Yeah, Costa Rica was mornings was the thing. So you just shift it around.
Yeah,
So for me, the afternoon, I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it was the afternoons where this was last year because I was doing it for 3 months. So I would have to do calls, yeah, first thing in the morning which
Yeah.
were the afternoons of, you probably remember too, as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, about a
So you
6 hour
just,
time difference, isn't it? Or a
that's
5 hours
right.
or something. Yeah, yeah.
So you just shift it
Yeah,
around. I use different schedulers. So I use a Squarespace scheduler,
yeah,
and then whatever time zone I'm in, I just shift it around. And it's very easy because then it just gives the availability to your client for them to be able to book in a time that works for them, and they don't really know where you are.
yeah. Well, it's
Um,
true. Yeah,
because they just see, okay, I've got a time slot at 4 o'clock in the afternoon UK time,
yeah,
and you could be doing that at 9 o'clock in the morning.
yeah. No, I must admit, when we were in Mexico, that was actually the nice thing about being that side of the world is you can get all the
Yes,
work stuff just out of the way in the morning. Then you've got the whole rest of the day
yes,
to sort of do what you want to do, and it is actually quite advantageous. I found being able
yes.
to work like that. So I'm an
It
early
was
bird.
quite nice having the. Sorry, go
No,
on.
no, so I'm an early bird anyway, so I'd be up at like 5 or 6 in the morning, and so it was very easy to just get calls done, and yeah, by noon you kind of finished and off out the door.
Yeah, I was going to say it's quite nice because you don't get anything in the afternoon, do you? You don't get any calls,
No,
no messages, and the afternoon is yourself. But yeah, but sometimes it's just about adjusting as well, isn't it? Like bedtimes, I will adjust my time zone. In Costa Rica, for example,
yeah,
it would go dark very early, and we would
yeah,
just go to bed at 8 o'clock, and then I would get up very early, and then like you were saying, and I can get up, exercise, and then when I'm here, I change it again. So it's just, I tend to work a little bit more with the circadian rhythm of light and dark,
yeah.
more than
Sort of
um,
clocks and the structure that is,
yeah, exactly. You
yeah,
just adjust.
or construct, shall I say? I mean, time is just a construct at the end of the day, isn't it? So, yeah,
Absolutely, just being flexible.
yeah, just a much healthier way to live as well. And there's a lot of benefits, aren't there, to sort of being out in the sun first thing in the morning, and
Yes.
so yeah, it's very good for well, as you say, for your circadian rhythms and just everything else. It's really beneficial. I try and get out sort of at 6, when it's getting light at 6 here now, so I try and get outside then and just get out into the sun and go for a bike ride or something first thing. And it's just sets you up.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to exercise first thing in the morning too. It really just helps me get focused, supports a healthy mind. But for me, often when I'm traveling, it's so hot in the day, you have to do it first thing in the morning. So it's
Yeah,
beneficial just to get up early, do some exercise, and set yourself up for the day.
yeah. Mummy, you saying it's going to hit sort of mid 30s in Morocco this week, so yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I know it's going to be crazy
Challenges,
heat.
yeah. So, have you got sort of a kind of a wrap up? Have you got anything you want to say to parents out there who are maybe thinking about this, doing this, and having this lifestyle, but are just hesitant?
Once you've done it, it's all very easy to say in hindsight, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because I think for most people, it's unpicking those internal conditioned structures. It's a little bit of fear that you have to sort of look through. I mean, in hindsight, I could say, oh my goodness, why didn't I do this sooner? Um, but it always happens at the right time. And I think you've just got to keep exploring. If you're picking up your child and they from school and they kind of like, for me, my daughter was so emotional when she'd get home from school. There'd be a sort of an hour where you couldn't speak to her because I just think they're holding everything in. They're sort of suppressing everything in. And now she's a completely different child, like just totally
yeah,
very rare to have any of those kind of feelings. She's very calm and centered all the time.
yeah,
But if you're going through those motions, and I know other friends are having the same experiences, and you're really unhappy with what they're learning in school,
yeah,
then just try it. You're never going to know unless you try it. I think we're very lucky in the UK that we have it available to us. We've been traveling in lots of other countries, and actually obviously we meet a lot of Europeans around the world, and they're always like, oh my goodness, I would love to be able to do that.
yeah,
In fact, we've met German families in Portugal, and they've really struggled to take their children out of school.
yeah,
So I think we're really fortunate in England that we have this opportunity available to us, that actually we can try it. And if it doesn't work,
yeah.
you can then
Go
you
back
can
in.
then take it from there. Your child can go back in. But if you don't try it, you won't know. For me, the best experiences have always come when I've challenged myself. Um, even coming to Morocco felt like quite a big
Yeah,
challenge. I've been to Marrakesh before, but I was really unsure about, what the roads were going to be like, what the people were going to be like, how I was going to find, none of the internet works here. You can't get cash outside the country. It's a
Yeah,
lot of unknowns. But I guess, and starting your own company, anything like that, where you've got to challenge yourself and push yourself out of the comfort zone, you don't know unless you try. So that would be my thing, is if you're in any of those kind of feelings, just give it a try. You don't know what you're going to experience unless you explore it.
that's great advice. Thank you ever so much for that. And I completely agree. We wouldn't go back to how things were before. We just wouldn't. And there's something magical about watching your children learn and develop on their terms as
Yeah,
well. And being able to sort of facilitate that as a parent, I think it's a wonderful thing. Do you think your daughter also, you said she's 13, do you
yeah.
think she's a bit maybe less teenagery than her peers at school would be as well?
Yes, although I can still see those teenage traits
Yeah,
coming out. Probably she hasn't got the peer influence in quite the same way that you have in
yeah,
school. Um, but also nothing's perfect. I don't want to say that everything's perfect. She doesn't have a big community of friends around her because we're
yeah,
always traveling on the road. So that is something I'm always trying to explore and trying to find ways to navigate that, where she keeps in touch with her friends. But also we go into places and situations where she's meeting new people. Um, but yeah, I guess what's also great, though, I think, about having a teen when you work at home, at least they're learning those kind of skills. Actually, my daughter's going to do your course. Do
Thank you.
a
Yeah,
plug here. But it's one thing that I really wanted her to be able to do, was because school doesn't teach you that. It kind of teaches you very mainstream jobs.
yeah,
And what's great is when they're sort of looking at you and seeing how you work, is they're learning things like Canva and Zoom,
yeah,
and how you do your Excel spreadsheets and your strategy.
yeah.
And even sometimes it drives me a little crazy that she's trying to help me all the time, looking over my shoulder. You probably have a similar experience. But I also love the fact that she's learning these skills and that there's an interest in it.
And sort of things like time management as well, and just
Yeah.
like that, because when you're in school, everything's managed for you, isn't it? You don't have the opportunity to even try and manage your own time. So I've just been invaded by my 5-year-old. She's come to get stuff out of the wardrobe. So if you can hear it in
Oh,
the background, I apologise. But
no,
yeah,
it's great.
so what that's really great, and thank you for those sort of last few words as well. That's really really interesting, and yeah, I'm with you on that. I'd say if you just try it, just give it a go, and see how it goes, because there's nothing that you can't undo. You're not going to damage your child irreparably if they're out of school for a few terms and it doesn't work out. Just go for it. So thank you so much, Vanessa. It's been a real pleasure
Oh,
talking to you today. I really enjoyed having you here.
it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much, Richard.
And I'll go now and enjoy the flesh pots of Marrakesh. So
Yeah, looking forward to it.
take care.
Thanks ever so much. See you soon. Take
Bye
care.
bye.
Bye.